Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the show. We got a great show planned for you this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are watching. Our old buddy Carlan Gay is going to be on the program from Sporting News. We'll go over the latest in baseball and also the NBA. We got some big news to talk about, the NBA coach firing. We'll get to that in just a second. Also, sports professor Rick Horrow is in the house. Guest contributors, of course, always from Legal Sports Report. This is our President's Day edition, our Monday morning edition of the show. Holiday or not, we're going to deliver all the news, notes, and information to you here on the show today. And that begins with arguably, the Super Bowl of NASCAR. Now, for those of you who generally are used to watching the Daytona 500 on a late Sunday or early Sunday afternoon, depending on where you are, this thing was rained out. I live in Florida, and trust me when I tell you, there was no games being played anywhere outdoors all over Florida yesterday, all the way north, all the way south. But they will try to play, or to race, I should say, today on the track in Daytona at Daytona National Speedway at 4 p.m. Eastern. So leading up to Pharrell, coast to coast, we'll have some live updates, a very rare Monday Daytona 500 as it stands. And by the way, for those of you who bet on the Daytona 500, those odds still hold. We'll show them to you. This is via FanDuel coming up later this afternoon. Denny Hamlin is the favorite, followed by Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, and Brad Keselowski at 11-1. Naturally, this is usually a very exciting race. Track, I think, will be good by later this afternoon. Fields, I'm not so sure around Florida with all the rain that happened yesterday and last night. All right, in the NBA, ESPN broke this story a short time ago. Brooklyn Nets looking for a new head coach. Remember, Steve Nash was out. Now Jacques Vaughn is out. 21-33 this season. His record was 129 and 226 as a career head coach. But hey, this is what happens in the NBA. Coaches get recycled. They get another chance to coach. I'm sure Jacques Vaughn will get another one. And hard to believe this is actually his fault, to be honest with you, with the way that Brooklyn sort of tore things down over a year ago. Okay, now this morning in Arizona, we even got a bigger story as far as reporters are concerned, and speaking to arguably one of the great future Hall of Famers that's still involved in the game right now, and that is Mike Trout. He no longer has Shohei Ohtani as his locker mate and his teammate, but Mike Trout spoke to reporters for the first time on reporting day today in Arizona, and he says that he wants to remain a member of the Los Angeles Angels. That's right. He says he still wants to be there, although he said you never know in the future, a trade could potentially happen. He does want the Angels to make more moves. This is what he said to reporters this morning. So naturally, Trout going to stick with the Angels for now, leaving sort of that, little crack in the door open to potentially accept a trade. We will see. Again, he's going to have, an opportunity to decide what do whatever he wants. But for the time being, opening up the 2024 season, Mike Trout will be in the outfield, will be batting, second, third for the Los Angeles Angels. Also a signing this morning, and this coming from MLB Network. Brandon Woodruff is back with the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, keep in mind, he's not going to pitch this season, so Brewers fans don't get too excited, but you will have him back pitching a full complement of innings in 2 years. So not this year, but next year he is out for the season. He had surgery that would sideline him, so he'll be back in 2025 after the shoulder surgery that he had. Speaking of injuries in Arizona and in spring training, Texas Rangers don't like this one. Josh Young, a second straight year with a spring injury. This is kind of strange. 3 weeks with a strained calf. Young will be out for the Texas Rangers. Missed time, of course, last year as well. Over the weekend, Randall Grichuk signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. It actually amounts to about $2 million with the buyout with the Arizona Diamondbacks for the 2024 season. How about this one? Kung Fu Panda is back. Did not expect to see this. 37 years old, Kung Fu Panda back with the Giants, the place that he won the World Series with. So how about that? It's Pablo Sandoval back in at least the sort of big leagues in spring training. My guess is he'll give it a go. If it works, he'll make the team. If not, that could be it. Also, Liam Hendricks going to be getting a 2-year deal with the Boston Red Sox, $10 million guaranteed per reports over at ESPN. So that's the latest in spring training and baseball as well. Now, let's get to the latest in college basketball. We'll start over on the women's side. Paige Bueckers is going to return next season for UConn. She was projected to be the number 3 overall pick in the WNBA draft, but wants to give it another go. South Carolina has won again, 43rd straight SEC game on the women's side. They are the number 1 team in the country. They beat Georgia 70-56 on Sunday. In college hoops on the men's side, maybe this shouldn't be a surprise over in the Big Ten. Ohio State, unranked, with a new coach, beats number 2 Purdue. How about this? 73-69 the final. And number 1 UConn, trending toward getting one of the top 4 seeds in the upcoming NCAA tournament. They beat Marquette by a final of 81-53. It was not close. Okay, a lot of talk about NBA All-Star Game this weekend. A lot of negativity about this weekend. We're going to get into this throughout the show. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it ugly? Well, maybe the highlight of the weekend was Steph Curry. Steph Curry defeated Sabrina Ionescu in the All-Star Shootout. Steph won by 3. He had 29 points. Ionescu had 26. Damian Lillard wins an All-Star Game MVP one night after winning a 3-point contest. So it was Dame weekend in Indianapolis, although the All-Star Game itself, my gosh, was pushing 400 points, no defense whatsoever. Mac McClung wins the dunk contest again. They put Shaquille O'Neal on the court. He jumped over him, and he dunked. He's the first player in NBA history to repeat, the 5th player in NBA history to repeat as dunk contest champion. I should know. I saw Dominique Wilkins win back-to-back. That was a long time ago. Also, Adam Silver says the NBA is going to reassess the G League Ignite in wake of the NILs. They were found to be an alternative for college and high school. We're hearing a lot about this with NILs, the NBA, and college basketball as well. All right, sports business news as far as the sports betting companies are concerned. DraftKings announced they're acquiring a company called Jackpocket, for $750 million. They were a digital lottery app in the United States. Jason Robbins said that they want to get involved in the U.S. digital lottery vertical with their acquisition. So maybe iGaming is part of this conversation as well. At the Genesis Open, it was a very up and down weekend, more up than down, but Hideki Matsuyama ended up winning the championship, 9 under 62 in the final round. That's the lowest score that anybody's ever had at the Riviera. Again, ups and downs for Matsuyama. That's kind of his calling card. Ilya Tupara defeats Alexander Volkanovski. Got that right? Okay. To take the UFC featherweight belt. And finally, as we mentioned, Daytona 500 going to, basically race today. I hope they get to race today this afternoon. I will tell you this. In Florida, for the first time in a while, it is windy. It is sort of cold. It is sort of rainy. So this is not like the ideal conditions for Denny Hamlin and company. But naturally, that's what they're going to do. I mean, there's sort of no choice. And this is not unprecedented. They have raced on Mondays before. I just don't remember. I feel like it's been a really long time since they've started a Daytona 500 on a Monday. They have finished Daytona 500s on a Monday, but to actually start, it's been a while since then. Again, Hamlin plus 850, he is the favorite. Okay, a favorite of the show, Carlan Gay is joining us coming up next. We'll talk some baseball, some basketball. I know Carlan's been really busy. We'll catch up over the last couple of months calling FIBA basketball overseas, but he's up with us coming up next as we return on NewsWire after the next.
Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilkes' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets and when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's great to catch up with Carlan Gay. He's back in the house. For those of you who follow him, of course, he calls all kinds of basketball internationally, locally, and it is great to have him back. It's been a while, Carlan, since you and I have talked. I feel like we got a ton to dive into. We'll do a lot of NBA. Maybe we'll mix in some baseball as well, and it's great to catch up. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, glad to see that you have not aged a bit. You look the exact same as the last time I saw you, aging like a fine wine.
Less hair, though. I'm just being honest here. You don't see the back, and you just see the front. Okay, so Carlan, listen, you are, obviously somebody that can speak to watching for many, many years, and I did not watch the All-Star game. My son was watching it and sort of giving me some commentary. He's 11, and so he's like, was this the way it always was, where it just looks like they don't want to play? I'm like, actually, no. It really was semi-competitive through the years, but we're reaching levels now, Carlan, of, you cannot even call this pickup basketball because in pickup basketball, the defenders defend. So I just don't know what the answer is here. A lot of complaining on social media. That's nothing new. People complain about everything. But do you think that we've come to the end of the line as far as keeping the game the way it is? Because what I would say is, there's nothing wrong with playing an all-star game that's 150 to 140 or 170 to 160, but it did seem there was some apathy, I got to be honest, on the side of the players, meaning that just get me out of here because I know we have 4 days off after this too. So complicated answer, I know, and I guess I'll put your commissioner hat on for a minute. What do you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because, it really feels like the NBA is actually officially back, right? Like people are complaining that it was in a cold weather city. People are complaining that the All-Star Saturday night didn't live up to the hype. And then people are complaining that the All-Star game didn't have any competitiveness at all throughout the, 48 minutes that they played. You're right, Craig. It wasn't a great game. It wasn't a great showcase for the league. And when the league talks about this All-Star game, right, they talk about a couple of things. One, it's a showcase for the greatest players on the planet, right? We did not see a showcase of the greatest players on the planet. All we saw is the greatest players on the planet kind of walk through, really, a basketball game. The second thing they say, it's really for the fans. And when they say the fans, they mean kids, right? They mean the younger generation. Introduce them to the stars so that maybe they'll beg mom and dad to bring them to a game. Maybe they'll beg mom and dad to have them buy a league pass so they can follow their favorite stars all throughout. And when you start the game, it was supposed to start, by the way, at 8 Eastern. When you start the game at 8:45, is it really about the kids at that point? No, it's not about the kids, right? Look at the All-Star game, in the NHL. They started that at 3 Eastern on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. That's a perfect family-friendly viewing experience. Same with the Pro Bowl. Everyone always says, we're not going to watch the Pro Bowl. You check the ratings. People actually watch the Pro Bowl. That started at 3 Eastern on a Sunday. Why is the NBA All-Star Game starting at a 8:45 Eastern time? And then you try to say that you're going to market this to kids. Kids got to go to sleep at some point, and normally they're in bed by 8:45. I hope they are anyway. So when you look at this, it's the league's kind of slapping everybody in the face by saying one thing and doing the other. And you know what? I'm not going to get too bent out of shape over one game, right? The All-Star Game is never going to be competitive. I've come to terms with that. But Craig, I actually think this is a larger picture deal here. And what I mean by that is the competitiveness overall in the NBA has waned throughout the years. I grew up on 90s basketball, early 2000s, where, guys wanted to beat each other regardless of whether it was a regular season game, an all-star game, a preseason game. Now we only see people really try when it's in the playoffs. It used to be at some point, hey, we're on national TV, we're going to try. We're going to try to compete through 182, through 82 games. We're going to try to compete. It's not the case anymore. Like, you can watch a random Wednesday night NBA game and see some lack of effort there. And that's kind of seeped into the All-Star Game. And the All-Star Game is just a little bit of, to my opinion, a microcosm of what's happening overall in the NBA, is that players don't want to compete unless they're playing for those 16 wins from April, May, and June.
Yeah, no, it's a real issue. And I just think when you move forward with this, I mean, they've tinkered with it, like Adam Silver has tinkered with the East versus West and changed the dunk contest, changed some of the three-point contests. He gave the players an additional 4 days off after the All-Star Game just to sort of secure the fact that it would be a little competitive. So, I mean, have you thought, Carlan, about what some answers would be? I know they're not going to scrap the game, but what I think, the problem, I think, Carlan, is moving forward is that I think fans are going to start to not buy these changes, meaning that, okay, yeah, great, this is what they're doing. They're trying this, they're trying that. And then it's going to feel like the Pro Bowl. Well, they've just given up at this point, and they're just like, look, we know what it is, and if you want to watch it, you do or don't. Maybe that's just all the NBA can do at this point. But to get a competitive game, you probably need to have the younger players playing in it. But then again, nobody's going to watch it because the younger players are playing in it too. I don't know that there's an easy answer for this.
I think we're already there kind of with the Pro Bowl situation, but they're just not saying it out loud. Like, I think Adam Silver last night, when he handed the trophy over to Giannis Antetokounmpo, he didn't say that your team won. All he said was your team scored the most points. Like, that was his passive aggressive way of saying, hey, I was not happy with the effort here. He could feel the energy in the crowd. And All-Star Game tickets are not cheap. They're very expensive, right? And you see a courtside, there's a who's who and all that stuff. So it's not really, a cheap ticket to buy. The only way that the NBA is going to take this seriously in terms of changing the game and having their players really go out and put forth an effort that looks somewhat close to a basketball game like they used to, is if the fans stop watching the game. And I have a feeling by tomorrow morning at some point, Turner Sports is going to come out and say, hey, we just got record numbers for watching two, broadcasts of the NBA. There was an alt cast and there was a main cast. And that's the problem with these things. If we're going to keep watching it, even though we're complaining about it, nothing is going to change until you turn it off, officially off your TV, and they can no longer say, hey, we had record ratings.
Yeah, no, well said, Carlan. And again, not an easy answer for any of these commissioners when they did it. Remember, baseball made the game count. I mean, maybe that has, some sort of counting towards something. Feels like there's no need to throw money at these guys anymore. It's just a matter of what we're going to get going forward.
I think that your point,
honestly. Yeah. I mean, your point is well taken. Maybe they just have accepted that this is no longer the game that we grew up watching, which was always really cool and like wondering who was going to win the MVP. Real quick, Carlan, over to baseball. I wanted to talk more with you about this, but we still have a ton of free agents out there. They're calling it the Boras Five. All five Scott Boras clients are still out there: Snell, Montgomery, Bellinger, Chapman, and then JD Martinez as well. It's a frustrating time, I know, to be one of those free agents in baseball, to not know where you're going to go. And basically every narrative we've been given, Carlan, in the last 3 months about, wow, it's Ohtani's fault, it's Yamamoto's fault, it's this guy's fault, it's nobody's fault. I haven't gotten to the bottom as to why this is happening, but certainly some questions have to be asked.
Yeah, honestly, it is a tough time to find money in Major League Baseball, it seems right now. But I guess when you look at, the clients that Boras has, you look at right at the top, a pitcher in Blake Snell, right? He led the league in ERA last season, over 200 strikeouts, career high 32 starts. Obviously, he wins the Cy Young. By the way, if Blake Snell starts 30 games, just give him the Cy Young, right? Every time he starts 30 games, he's going to win the Cy Young. That's just what happens with Blake Snell. And he's still out there. And that's what surprises me really about this free agency class. You look at, in the majors right now, if you don't have pitching, you could kiss winning a championship goodbye, right? Like that is really what baseball has become. And Blake Snell, who just had a terrific year, for him to still be sitting out there is very surprising to me. I would expect him to at least get an offer from, the Giants or the Angels, someone to bring him in. I know the Giants added Robbie Ray and Jason, or Jordan Hicks rather, but you can add a Blake Snell and really take your team over the top. If you're really going for it, go ahead and get Blake Snell out there, and hopefully all these cards fall into place. But I do feel like we're going to get a message like any minute now that these guys have signed somewhere. So I don't want to give too many opinions out there.
We almost in March here without them signed. Just reminds me of a couple of years ago. All right, Carlan. Hey, great to catch up again. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. I really appreciate it. I hope we get to talk soon. Thanks again.
Likewise.
Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York G has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to catch up with the sports professor, Rick Horrow, here on the show. We got some fun things to talk about, great topics. Rick and I, both South Florida residents. Rick a little bit on the northern eastern side in the Jupiter area. Craig on the Hollywood side. So we are neighbors, have been neighbors, have known each other for, I feel like it's almost 20 years, if not longer. Rick, great to have you here on the show, and hope your day is off to a good start.
Yeah, first of many. I'd be glad to do this. I mean, I'm an hour down the road with you, but I don't get any love from you. But now I am going to get a lot of love from you on a regular basis. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great to me.
Yeah.
I know we got a lot of topics here, so let's see if we can nail them all here before we let you go here. I know you got a busy day. The NBA, I just had Carlan Gay from Sporting News on. A lot of the conversation about just how rough the watch was to watch these, contests and to watch the game, and will changes come again? But the positive from this was to see Sabrina Ionescu take on Steph Curry in the three-point contest. Now, naturally, that's the positive to come out of this weekend. Maybe the biggest positive to see how competitive these two were in the NBA three-point contest.
Well, the over-under for Sunday was about 480, and I took over, so that was good. There is Olay defense. There's nothing to this. And, the Gary Bettman, Adam Silver contest always talks about how do we get more creative. Well, the Sunday or the second day, NHL wins because of their 3-on-3. I love that format. NBA still needs work. The day before the Ionescu deal, everybody was complaining, why didn't we let Caitlin Clark in and waive the rules or figure out how to do it? Didn't really matter. It was a riveting event. 31% we see Saturday night, window against window, maybe even more. And so take a look at this deal. Everybody excited about what to do with this. Obviously, this on the heels of Caitlin Clark coming in next year. It's going to be huge for not only the NBA, but for basketball, obviously WNBA. And the side benefit to this, Craig, obviously, is a $38 million a year WNBA TV deal. That's not a lot compared to the $2.6 billion the NBA generates, but they're both expiring next year or so. So let's see where women's sports goes. I predict on a pro rata basis, the ceiling is going to be much higher for the next WNBA contract as compared to the NBA, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely so. And I think that starting events like this and getting the attention on shows like this will certainly help the NBA's cause, even if we find out the ratings are down, which I have a feeling we're not going to find out. Okay, a new UFC champion from Spain, Rick. Like, this is a first. And, obviously when we're getting worldly in the UFC, it brings a lot of attention to the sport.
Well, the new face, the new country, the new intensity, and of course Dana White all over it. He says, let's bring an event to FC Barcelona Bernabeu Stadium and have FC Barca be part of the promotion of it. And why not? Shock the world. The beauty of UFC is you got 2.5 minutes of fighting, and it basically shocks the world if something happens that nobody expected. It's like old Buster Douglas, who you weren't born yet, but I was in the prime, and everybody thought, oh, boy, how about that deal? Well, on the UFC side, it's just as important, and it's not just who wins, but what do you do with it? And now you've got a whole new country with passionate fans following this individual, and there's more to come.
I saw Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson, Rick. I am.
You are old enough.
I'm not 32. I'm 50 years old, Rick. That's okay. All right.
I don't want to.
Salt Lake City, they have been trying to get an expansion team for Major League Baseball. There was some discussion that maybe they would take on the Oakland Athletics. It looks like Oakland's going to play in Sacramento for a couple of years and then potentially go to Las Vegas, or at least that's what it seems like. But if an expansion team does get awarded, and we've heard Nashville, Rick, I know you've heard the same thing, especially if there's two teams, it feels like Salt Lake is right there to potentially get a team in the future.
Well, here's the bottom line of Salt Lake. It's a great market, 3 million. It feels like Oklahoma City when I did stuff there. The difference is Oklahoma City is 3 hours from Dallas. Salt Lake City is 3 hours from nothing. And the time zone, the mountain time zone, other than Denver, the leagues need a second team in the mountain time zone. Doesn't mean you grapple for it if it doesn't exist, but it does mean that they're open to an opportunity. All you need now are facilities and ownership. Well, Larry Miller may take care of that. Remember him with Utah Jazz fame way back when, his car dealerships. He is now developing a $3.8 billion deal that will transform a downtown area, the Power District, with the Power headquarters as part of the anchor and staple. And so it's going to happen as far as a minor league facility. It'll be expandable. Nobody's going to build it and they will come kind of thing. But on the other side of town, you've got an arena that has the Jazz and the NHL. Gary Bettman looking at, do we relocate Phoenix? Do we have expansion? So if you have two major league sports dealing with this city, and this city has an opportunity to embrace basically everything but NFL, there is a great deal to see this as the next big expansion candidate beyond Vegas. And I think it's going to happen.
All right. Well, we'll see. And again, they want to get those stadiums figured out. The Tampa Bay Stadium, of course, the new one that they're going to build eventually. And, now with Oakland going, it seems like those things will probably get resolved. I know before Rob Manfred leaves, those are the two things he'd like to get accomplished before.
Yeah, but let me just say something. Real quick, because this is important. If you stick the course, a lot of uncertainties today. Vegas, when we were there at the Super Bowl, Mayor Goodman says, not so fast. So all of a sudden, the Vegas A's may have to take a step back. Sacramento, obviously a big deal. They've met all day last week in Oakland. Maybe that happens. But as long as Salt Lake says, yeah, we're going to try to do this deal, and we're going to be all things to all people, relocation, expansion, hockey, baseball, they're going to be okay.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, any expansion team in any sport is thriving at the moment, so why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Speaking of thriving, Major League Soccer, once Messi was announced to go to Inter Miami last year, just completely blew up. Everybody wanting to see his games, whether he's in it or not. We can tell a different story on that one, Rick, whether or not he plays in some of these games, crushing the fans after spending his money. But Season Pass is about to start. Apple TV, I know they made the announcement for all their broadcasters last week who's going to be calling the games. And just one player having this kind of impact on subscriptions, Rick, is sort of the incredible story right now going on in the MLS.
Well, it saved Don Garber. Don's a friend, but this was a perfect storm. And a lot of the MLS owners were saying, I love the idea of $2.5 billion over 10 years, but wait, a lot of it is speculative. It is subscriber-based. We can't borrow on it. We can't finance on it. We can't build facilities on it. We hope. Well, and Messi comes along, and it's better than expectations. And now we see all of the subscriber base from last year. They passed their 2 million subscribers. I do think that Apple is excited about the product, and maybe they turn some of the speculative long-term into some guarantee as against the subscription sales. The point is that FC Miami, you're down here. It was a perennial doormat, and now it is the beacon, and it's the next post-Beckham hope for the MLS. And what they've got to do, as you know, Craig, is bridge the deal now between what they're doing now, buy a couple more years, get all excited about the World Cup. Miami's got a few host games along with 10 other U.S. cities and Mexico and Canada, and you get excited about that, and then you go into your next deal as far as the MLS. And when you think of the franchise values, their average is about $500 million as compared to NFL, $5 billion. But nobody's ever thought the NFL is going to be there. But who'd have thought that the MLS years ago would have an average franchise value of $500 million? Still got to get the stadium done and completed in South Florida, as you know. But stadium building down in South Florida, you and I can talk about it till we're blue in the face. Some of us spent 40 years getting these things done. And finally, we got something done. So maybe soccer's coming.
Yeah, I know Rick had a hand in a stadium or two back in the day. Story for another day. As we go, Rick, we both live in South Florida. Our neighbors to the north in Orlando and Daytona, they had a lot of rain over the last couple of days. We're getting a rare start to finish Daytona 500 here on a Monday. I don't want to throw a curveball at you here, but as far as like economic impact to have this race go another day, is that a good thing for that area? They keep everybody there another day, or is it a bad thing in the sense that some people, have to get back to work tomorrow and just say, hey, look, I'm not going to be able to stick this out till 10 p.m. tonight?
It depends on whether you believe that President's Day is a bona fide holiday for many people or not. It brings me back to last month. You remember when snow postponed the Sunday Steelers-Bills game. They slid it to Monday. Happened to be Martin Luther King Day, and now it may be a regular feature. Get used to 2 Martin Luther King Monday NFL games because of that quote-unquote accident meteorologically. I do think that Daytona fans are pretty avid. Most fans are going to stick it out. They may leave after the race. You know, the 4 o'clock is an accommodation for TV, but it's not necessarily an accommodation for those fans, because if the race is over at 7 or 8 and you live in Oklahoma or Kansas, you got to drive all night and you may not get back for your next day. Hey, suck it up. That's a problem for employers. They're going to call in sick, and I will write the letter, because it is 800 million or so economic impact for these folks, and they got to have it today. And I'm excited because 4 o'clock today, the only thing I've got is a Pharrell segment, and I'll watch that. I'll stop for 10 minutes to do Pharrell this afternoon. That's the least I can do.
Rick's not mailing any segments in on SportsGrid. I know that. All right, Rick, great stuff as always. Appreciate you catching up. It's great for you and I to see each other virtually and talk like we did in the old days. Thanks again for coming on.
All right, man. We'll do it again. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Rick Horrow, sports professor, joining us here on NewsWire. We'll be back with a preview of the College Basketball Championship.
Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points, defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points, and then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Happy President's Day. It's cool to have different guests on the show today. My gosh, a trio of new guests from the old days. We got Carlan Gay on the show, the sports professor Rick Horrow. We got Coach Young coming up in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned to that as well. Big story out of the NBA with a coach being fired today, and he got fired on his day off, right? We've heard that one before. That's from Clark's. Anyway, college basketball championship coming fast and furious. Looks like UConn, after their win, is going to secure a number one seed, barring some catastrophe. But who else will be chasing down and cutting down the rims in the Final Four in April? Let's check in with Ben Stevens for the latest in futures odds in college hoops.
Craig, yesterday was a big day around college basketball. Upsets to be had in conference play in the middle of February, but maybe more importantly, exactly 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. Just 4 weeks left of this college basketball season until the bracket in the field of 68 is revealed. And after a monumental weekend around the sport, Craig, we are starting to see some changes from the odds perspective as we get closer and closer to March. The number one team in the country has looked exactly like the best team in all of the land. The UConn Huskies, the defending national champs. A top 5 matchup in Hartford for the Huskies on Saturday afternoon against fourth-ranked Marquette. And number one looked like number one. A 28-point margin, the largest we have ever seen in a top 5 tilt between two conference teams in the AP poll era. And reflected in the odds now, Craig, as you will see Cam Spencer, a man that likes to talk his talk, and Connecticut, the defending national champs, an incredibly short price into minus money to reach the Final Four. These the Final Four odds for the nation's best teams around the country. And UConn at this moment, Craig, is favored with a minus money price to be one of the Final Four teams in the hunt for a second consecutive national championship. We'll look at the title odds in just a moment, but Dan Hurley's Huskies, Craig, trying to become the first back-to-back national champion in men's college basketball at the Division I level for the first time since Florida did so, your alma mater, in 2006 and 07. Purdue, second best price, plus 180. The Boilermakers upset yesterday, second ranked in the country by Ohio State after dismissing Chris Holtmann earlier this week. A monumental upset. Houston right there, plus 210. Arizona, plus 240. And Tennessee, who under Rick Barnes has struggled to get past the Sweet 16, fifth best price at this moment at plus 280. So we correlate the Final Four odds to our national championship odds. Zach Edey and Purdue, second best price at 8-1. But Craig, look at the margin here for Connecticut in front of every other team in all of college basketball. Plus 450 price on the Huskies. Craig, that is the shortest number we have seen for any team so far this season. UConn and Purdue entered this previous weekend co-favorites to win a national championship at plus 650. Take $2 off the price for UConn, add on $1.50 for Purdue. Right in front of Houston, that third best price for Kelvin Sampson's Cougs at 9-1. But again, Craig, UConn looking to go back-to-back for the first time since 06-07. Now the price starting to reflect how realistic that potential is for Dan Hurley's Huskies. Just under 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. 4 weeks from this moment, Craig, we'll be talking about the bracket for the 2024 NCAA tournament.
All right, great stuff always from Ben. You know what's up with great stuff? It's Coach Young. He's in the house with us here on this Monday, this President's Day. No rest for the weary for Coach all over SportsGrid. It's almost Coach, well, it's always Coach Young season, but it really is now as we're down to the stretch here in college basketball, NCAA tournament, NBA, and it's been a minute, Coach. Thanks for coming on the show. It's great to catch up.
Thanks for having me on, Craig. And just when I come on, we get breaking news with a head coach being fired today, Jacques Vaughn.
Yeah, we certainly do. And look, you know, I'm a Steve Nash fan, and I thought that he probably got fired unjustly at the time that he did, Coach. And after he gets fired, they ship everybody out of town anyway. So I don't even know what the point was that. And on top of this, I would ask you, Coach, you know, Jacques Vaughn obviously has not had a ton of success, win and loss record. Your record is what you say it is. Like that's his record. He'll probably get another shot at some point. I feel like he'll be an interim, like an assistant somewhere, and that guy gets fired, so Jacques will be coaching again. I loved him as a player. But is this fair, or is this just like the Nets looking at it like, hey, yeah, we're already in sort of teardown mode. Let's just bring it all the way down?
You know, when you look at this, folks, very rarely do you get a GM that's been in the spot of Sean Marks. Why do I mention Sean Marks? He's been through multiple owners. Mikhail Prokhorov hired him. Now he's with Joe Tsai. He's been through a multitude of coaches. And let's be honest, folks, everything was great with Sean Marks until they started going in and they went with the big three, right? The big three of obviously of KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. It flames out, right? They get rid of Nash. They get rid of some of the moving parts. They give the job to Jacques Vaughn, and it's still the same problem. And I think when you look at a team like Brooklyn, they're stuck in the middle. And there's nothing worse, Craig, to be than stuck in the middle in the NBA. You're winning or you're rebuilding. The Nets, after making the trade of Kevin Durant when they got back Mikal Bridges, let's be honest, folks, hasn't been as good as he was last year at the end of the year and then in the playoffs. Cam Johnson hasn't been as good as they thought they were going to get. So, and then obviously Ben Simmons can't stay healthy. At some point, do we start blaming the players? Do you stop blaming the coaches, meaning Nash and Jacques Vaughn? And do we look squarely at Sean Marks? Should he be the leader of this Brooklyn Nets franchise? I think he's got one more shot, and it may be the summer, which could also affect who could be the next coach.
Yeah, and a coveted job, no less, of course, playing in New York. I mean, who wouldn't want that job? But, he is the common denominator throughout the last few years of everything happening. There's no doubt about that. Before we get to college hoops, Coach, let's just dial it back real quick because, again, one of the trending social media stories of the day has been the disappointment of All-Star Weekend with the gameplay on Sunday, the dunk contest yet again. And it's easy for us to play the Monday morning quarterback, and here we are on Monday morning, Coach. But naturally speaking, it's a tough thing to keep putting the duct tapes and the Band-Aids on and making these little subtle changes to get people excited. And then you literally had fans during the game like groaning a little bit at the play of the game. I mean, I feel bad for Indianapolis.
I do feel bad for Indianapolis. Obviously, anybody knows anything about Indiana basketball, all the way from the kids when they're young shooting on the farms with the hoops on the side of it, to high school, to college, a state that's got a rich tradition of basketball for a long, long time. Craig, the whole weekend was tough to watch. All right, it was tough to watch. I will say this, first off, the one highlight of All-Star Weekend, in my personal opinion, was Ionescu versus Steph Curry. That was the only thing I thought was competitive. Now, I didn't understand the point structure, the starry shot. I didn't get any of that nonsense. But the sheer competitiveness and great job by Sab, who I've known for a while since her days of Oregon. I know Sab was going to show up and show out, and she did an outstanding job. But let's kind of go through this real quick, Craig. 3-point contest, like I said, don't understand the rules, and I think better for them if they went old school, 5 racks, 4 balls in the money ball, 1 point for the 4 shots, 2 points for the last one. Everybody knows that. Number 2, dunk contest. Lord have mercy, just either scrap it or find another way around it, because unless you put big money behind superstar players, and you saw them basically find a way to get Jaylen Brown to the finals because they needed a name. I thought that guy, Jacob Toppin, had a better dunk round and should have went to the finals and got absolutely hosed. So what do? Do you go with all G League guys? Do you get like people, YouTube celebrities that do dunks, stuff like that? How do you make it better? I don't know. But the biggest problem, Craig, is the All-Star game. I'm a coach. I'm going to tell you right now, Craig, I watched 5 minutes of that game, and I was turned off by it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get into it. So here it is, folks. Think about this. We just came off the FIBA World Cup, right? The USA does not win it. Now, everybody wants to play for the Olympic team in 24. It's about pride. It's about honor. It's about representing your country. How about every year, NBA All-Star game, USA versus the world? And then whoever's the MVP, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, you donate that money to their favorite charity. If you put some kind of country pride, USA pride on the line, and then you go get the best players of Europe, whether it's someone like Jokic or Luka or Wemby, you go to Canada and you get RJ Barrett, you go get Jamal Murray. You get Embiid, which I will not use the fact that even though he's playing for the USA, I will say use the guys that were where they were born, right?
Yeah.
If you did USA versus the world and there's pride and honor there, I actually think you may get a more competitive game.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Coach Young has delivered the best option thus far for the NBA All-Star game. And I like the idea. Got to do something. Can't let this sit or else it's the Pro Bowl, which is pretty much there. All right, now let's shift over to very competitive basketball. Two teams with Final Four aspirations. There's no question. Houston has been phenomenal at home all season long. They're 9.5-point favorites over Iowa State tonight. Low total of 127.5. Do you think the Cougars get this done? Is this too many points? You rarely see a double-digit favorite of two teams in the top 10, Coach.
Well, here's the thing, folks. You guys, everybody knows the network. I'm as big of a Houston guy as there is. I'm a big believer in Kelvin Sampson. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I think eventually he will get a national championship. If you remember, this was the first game that Houston played in the Big 12, and they went to Iowa State and they got beat down early, came all the way back, and then couldn't get over the hump. This, to me, is way too many points. And I love Houston. I think they win. I think this is 9.5 is way too many points. The Cyclones are very good against the spread at 5-2 against the spread, if I'm not mistaken, and they're top 10 in KenPom. Too much respect for a really good Houston team. I think goes to the Final Four. I would take Iowa State plus the points. And ready, folks? I know it's 127.5. This is going to be close, folks. I think this game actually may go over. I think there's going to be a little bit more offense. Maybe the game is close, Craig, and then you get fouls down the stretch, stop clock, shoot free throws, and you get it from there. As long as Iowa State keeps it close, Craig, that means it's going to come down to foul shots at the end. I think it sneaks over that 127.5.
All right, before you go, Purdue has now, I think, put themselves in a position still to be a top seed in the NCAA tournament if all goes right, but that was a big loss for them over the weekend. Has UConn sealed it up, Coach, or they still need to win a few more, show and go a little bit in the tournament? What do you think?
I think UConn is the best team in the country. I think they were the best team in the country last year. I came on Bracket Central before the tournament and loved them to go to Final Four at 21. Craig, they got everything. They got guard play. They got big man play. They can beat you in the open court. They can beat you in the half court. They can out-rebound you. They can out-muscle you. They can do everything to you. And Dan Hurley has got this team absolutely clicking. I think they're the best team in the country. I don't think it's close. The second best team in the country is a team that is a 9-point favorite tonight in Houston. I think they got the defense. They don't have the size. But UConn, they're favored for a reason to win a national championship because they are that good.
All right, Coach. Thanks for coming on the show. Have a great day. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Craig.
We'll wrap it up next.
Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It felt during the year that there was a little bit of disconnect with Wilks and Kyle Shanahan. The total points allowed by Steve Wilks' defense the last 3 years before this, head coach for the Cardinals, they gave up the 26th most points. Defensive coordinator for the Browns, 20th most points. And then Carolina, they gave up the 19th most points.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Sacramento State baseball is not something I thought we would be ending the show with today. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. But again, we like to end the show on a high note if we can, and a lighthearted note at that too. So, look, there's a player you're going to learn about for the first time, just like I learned about him this weekend too. His name is Matt Massiangelo. I think I got that right. And he was hit 7 times in a baseball game in 8 plate appearances in a doubleheader on Saturday. If you weren't listening carefully, let me say it again. This young man was hit 7 times in 8 plate appearances on Saturday in a doubleheader. Okay? That's almost impossible to do. But it even gets better. On Sunday, Sacramento State played again, and in the bottom of the second inning, Matt was hit 1 more time. Now, the season record for the school, Sacramento State, is 19. He needs 6 more to reach the top 10. And the NCAA record is 37, shared by 3 players. So I'm not really sure that this is the intent. I can't imagine that it is. But in looking at the video, it does look like he is a little closer to the plate maybe than some other college baseball players. And it's not like they're hitting him because he's amazing and hitting like 30 or 40 bombs. They're just hitting him because he just happens to be near the plate. But needless to say, this is a pretty cool record to have, I guess. If you're going to have a record in college, you want to be remembered for something good, and I guess this is the way to do it, right? I got hit this amount of times. You can always tell his kids and his grandkids, hey, I was the one who got hit the most in the college baseball season. I guess if that goes on the resume or that goes on the baseball reference page, cool enough. And that's how we'll end on this President's Day on today's show. For those of you who are watching, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making us part of your day. Thanks to Coach Young for coming on the program. Also, sports professor Rick Horrow and Carlan Gay from Sporting News. And, of course, Ben Stevens for his video as well. Our producer, Sam. And thanks to all of you for watching our show. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your President's Day. We got Scott Farrell Coast to Coast coming up later today. Daytona 500, arguably the biggest sporting event of the weekend, is on a Monday at 4 o'clock Eastern. So I'm sure Scott will break that all down for you as well as in-game live. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you on Thursday.